the Secret Art of Business, and today I have Devin Goetz with me today, and I am very happy to have yet another art student with me because, yay, art students! Welcome to the
We stick
podcast, Devin.
together.
That's right,
Thank
we
you.
have to stick together. And you have not only gotten that art degree, but you are now working in the Big Apple, which I think a lot of people think about that being their big dream, but would love to talk about your path, although you can find art jobs anywhere. But let's start with what you're doing right now, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah. So I'm currently a senior art director. I'm in the agency life. So I am at the Mars agency. I may be in the Big Apple, but I am at this new agency currently and working from home, fully remote. Who would have
Oh,
thought?
wonderful!
But yes, on our team, currently working on the Henkel business, primarily the shopper commerce portion of the business. So, really helping conceptualize what those campaigns are for the brand and how those campaigns can adapt for retailers, as well as, unique brand engagements and activations. So, how can I interact with that brand at that specific retailer, whether it's in store or digital? That's going to drive to purchase, but it's going to really have that custom engagement that you're going to really remember.
Wonderful. And I think a lot of people think if I get an art degree or if I get into advertising or communications or things like that, I'm going to be at an ad agency. But as you and I know, not everybody is kind of cut out for that. And that's not a bad thing. We kind of all need to find what our specialization is. So, my question to you is, how did you know that this was your specialization, that advertising was the game you wanted to play?
So it's actually funny. I didn't know.
Even better.
And I think it falls into some of the later on questions, but art was always my passion. And so when I knew I wanted to go to CCAD, um, I didn't want to kind of have traditional art be my career. If I was going to pay for school, let me try something new. And that's where I found to love advertising and graphic design and that sort of thing. I'm that person who kind of loved to do everything. And I found that within advertising, you can kind of do it all. I can, you know, conceptualize the idea, I can curate the look and the vision, and I can play around with photography and collaborate with other artists as well within, advertising itself. So I felt like for someone who liked to kind of do everything and didn't want to strictly focus on one area, I can kind of play around and get to touch all of the things that the advertising world had to offer.
Of all the things, what is your favorite thing?
I'm always a maker. I think at the end of the day, I'm starting to really like putting together a look and a feel with an idea, as long as there's great strategy, and then telling someone else to go do it. Someone else to go make it, but this is my packaged up vision.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, well, then, that's actually a little bit of an introduction. I can ask you this question too, because I've been asking a lot of people this recently is, because you are doing a lot of conceptual stuff, are you using AI as a tool at this point? Or what are your thoughts on that in general? And they could be good or bad. It's just kind of
Yeah,
a
I
little,
mean, it's a crazy thing to talk about, right? Because I think right now in the tone that my current company is in is we don't know how to use we can use it more so when it comes to legality type of thing. And I think
mm-hmm.
that's kind of the big question, where's that fine line between where we use it in our creative, but then how do we leverage it specifically within marketing? It's, I think, kind of the same way to look at how we utilize stock photography, right? You're
Oh,
still
yeah.
purchasing those image rights or licensing agreements when you have talent and you're creative. I think it's still that sort of thing, but I think it's an amazing tool to help conceptualize and
Mm-hmm.
brainstorm visions. I think we're taught as a creative, when I'm brainstorming, I love to mind map. So just spitting out words, but they don't really connect. And you can kind of do that with AI and it's going to shoot out a vision. And I love that because then you can kind of take you out of your, um, creative block and really put you in a space that you never thought of.
I
So
agree
I
100%.
love it. I'm curious to see where it'll go. I haven't played around with it too much, but I wouldn't lie if I'm also a little afraid of it.
I think that's a fair statement. I do. And but right now, it's still just kind of in like, oh, this is kind of cool sort of phase,
Mhm.
and we're just going to kind of see where it goes and make sure we kind of um, hold our space as humans
Yeah,
while it comes to this too. I think it reminds me a lot of like when the Mac came on the scene and everybody was kind of freaked out about that. But it's a
right.
tool.
I think it's normal the way everyone's feeling. It's new technology. If it's
Yeah.
not this, it's going to be something else, and it's going to be the same reaction.
Thanks for those comments because you were on the front lines. So I appreciate that.
And they're holding us hostage. We can't use it.
Okay, so we really glossed upon it as far as your journey to where you got. So let's go back to when you were a child. When you were a child, what did you do that was fun and creative before somebody said, you know what, you have got to get a job?
Yeah, I as a kid I always remembered was always creative and just whether it was physically creating and making something or creative play. I remember I was always playing house or playing
Hmm.
teacher. Like it was creative in some sense. And I remember as a kid, you'd go to restaurants and you'd get the child menu and it was a coloring page. Like I was
Yes.
always coloring it. Or sometimes those restaurants I remember would have art contests and I would always do them and win them. And it would be like free child's meal or whatever. But I was always entering into art contests, whether it was, at these restaurants or local small competitions in my hometown or through my school, even being a part of like art fairs and trying to sell my work. So I was always creative and even tapping into other things as a kid. I was a part of 4-H, and people think it's just about cows and farming, but I was always taking more of the creative art projects and doing photography and that sort of thing. And so educating myself. And then again, it was a competition and going to the
Right,
state
right.
fair. And um, yeah,
That makes sense because advertising is a bit of a competition too.
yeah.
Because you
And
are
I
trying to
don't
sell your
know.
idea, win the campaign, that sort of thing.
And I don't even really know where my creativity stems from. No one I would say in my family is outwardly as creative as I am. I think I wouldn't say they're not creative. I think just in different ways. My mom was always scrapbooking when I was little, and
I would call that creative. So
my
yeah.
right. So when it comes to more of the traditional art that I love to do, that was kind of where I found my creativity.
I do think a lot of people were told to kind of tamp that down too, because people might say scrapbooking and they're like, oh, well, that's a cute hobby. But I mean,
Hmm.
is it? I mean, it's she. I'm sure she loves doing it, and it is. If you're really good at it, it does turn into a bit of an art form.
Right.
So
And
yeah, I don't.
I remember even as a kid, like saving up all my money from holidays and birthdays and till I had enough and I was going to Hobby Lobby and buying a new art supply just so I could try it out and play with
Right.
it. But that's where my money was going instead of like playing video games and that sort of thing.
That's kind of cool. I definitely was doing a lot of that same sort of stuff. Once you get the fever, you're like, oh, what is this? And
Yeah.
I still, with pens and things, I lose my mind. Look, oh, look at this.
Yes. Nerding out on the art supplies.
And for a brief period too, I got to do the back to school shopping with my daughter too, and just that whole nostalgia of the brand new crayons and
Oh yeah.
paper and glue. I'm like, oh my god, I'm just reliving this. I want my own. Okay, so you set yourself on a path. You knew you were going to be something creative, and you went to art school, and then you got into advertising. But what do you do now that is not work? Because sometimes it's challenging when you're in a creative field to stick go back to kind of your roots with the drawing and the free creating and things like that. So what do you do that kind of gets you out of that space that you're always in?
Yeah, it's very hard, and I think I'm still very young in my career. I've been in advertising for about 6 or 7 years now, post grad. So I think it took a lot also post college, that adjustment period of working and hustling and
Mm-hmm.
kind of that. It can be a kind of traumatizing moment for some people because
Oh
you're
yeah.
in such a routine. So I feel like I'm now finally getting out of that, hustling and working so hard, that I'm now having more time to work on what I love. And so I'm getting back into those passions and having more time, working on traditional work. So I've been getting back into painting and drawing, and whether it's for myself or just doing small commissions for people and selling them, and way cheaper than I probably should be, but
Oh, of course.
it's more about the enjoyment and having a
Yeah.
reason. If somebody's giving me something that they want done, I feel like that's giving me more of an excuse to create than me
Yes.
struggling and sitting there and like, what do I do with this blank canvas? And so that's also kind of what I've been trying to set for myself this year, is creating those projects outside of work that I do want to continue to tackle day in day, and just having fun and playing. And I'm trying new mediums, and um, I've also taken on some additional freelance work, so I'm still doing some design work, but it's not my everyday client work. So
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
gets more enjoyable because I'm still flexing my skills, but just working on different brands or different projects that I probably wouldn't be. And then also just getting back out into the art community and the scene, especially in New York, trying to attend more art events, which are always free and just great to go and mingle with people. Or
Yeah. Be
there's a
inspired.
great, yeah, and there's great artist talks, a part of creative mornings, which I've been trying to attend those. They're very early in the morning, but they are always inspiring with the artists and guest speakers that they have. I know they have different locations based on your region,
Mm-hmm.
so just
Mm-hmm.
attending and being more a part of the art scene to continue to be inspired and
Yeah, I
just
love
have
that. And I
fun.
love that you brought up Creative Mornings because that's a perfect example of just being around other people that kind of speak your language, that understand where you're
Mhm.
coming from, that you can find inspiration from. Because usually, from all the speakers, I am always wildly inspired. I think they are really fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
I always try to rally my friends, but they don't want to
I,
wake up early in
again,
the
it's
morning.
early.
So
Yes.
I think also it's a great one of those great events where you can do it alone
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's not a lot of effort. So I think it's a good small step
Yeah, and
for
even
those who are
like
looking
just
for
going
something
to a
like that.
gallery or a art museum or something like that, just something sometimes that's just different to be inspired. I love that I brought that up because yeah, that's such important fuel for us. Um,
Yeah.
so you mentioned in passing that you are early in your career. Where do you feel like you would like to take this? Do you know yet? Are you just going to kind of let it go organically, or do you like, you know what, I like this and I want to, chase this more?
Yeah, I have no clue. I feel like with
Love
most
it.
of my little bigger life decisions, I've kind of just let it take itself.
Mm-hmm.
I even being in New York, I never wanted to be in New York. I visited once in college with a bunch of friends for spring break our senior year. We were like, we're gonna reach out to all these agencies and look for jobs. People don't do that when they're seniors on their spring
Right.
break, but we are going to do that. And I've done this big cities before, but I came to New York and I just was overwhelmed. It was too much. And then I came for an interview and moved a week later, and so it happened very fast. And I've been here for since then, and I've loved it. And fell into that agency, and I was at my first agency for about 5 years, 6 years, which is rare. I feel like, especially
Yes,
as a
yes.
millennials, especially, I don't think we stay in a company for that long. But
Mhm.
I was there for a while, and it was really great. I think it took a lot to make that decision to leave. I started to feel myself kind of in that imposter syndrome and kind of ready for
Oh.
change. And so
Mhm.
last year around this time, I started at a new agency. So I'm stepping into that role and loving that. But it's always been in that commerce world within advertising. So I kind of fell into that as well. Um, So I'm just writing it out, but I think,
Oh,
because I have been in kind of one space in one area, that there is so much room and opportunity
oh
to
yeah.
growth and to step into other territories of
Well, you are getting a wild amount of experience.
it.
So once,
Thank
once,
you.
if anything, I look at it that way. It's like I don't know. I'll be to let this grow organically, but as of right this very minute, I'm getting so much experience, which I think is great for any artist because that's kind of the key to keep things moving, keep it interesting, and it could be in the same place or it could be in many places depending on that person and their personality. But thank you so much for doing this today. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate you sharing your history. I think it's going to be hugely helpful for people that are not only starting their career, but are, well within their career and understanding the path that you're kind of taking. Like I said, even though in a couple of your responses were, you know what, I don't know, and we'll see where it goes. I think there's a lot of, I don't know, kind of fun in that. It's very adventurous when you're like, I'm just going to wander for a while and see where I end up. And
Yeah.
that could be very,
And
very cool too.
I think that really kind of came even from the core of my childhood a little bit. Like growing up, it was my parents raising me, and it's like, you're going to go to either college for something you really want to do, or you're going to apply yourself and go into the military. And I was like, I'm not doing that, but I don't know. I don't know what else I would go to college
Yeah.
for. So I was like, let
But
me try this art thing.
give me a minute. I'll
And
think of something.
yeah, let me try this art thing. And I think even in that instance, my parents themselves were kind of skeptics, and I did all of the college research. They didn't go to college, and so I was doing all of kind of preparing them and taking them on college visits, and that was more so for them than for
Oh,
me
yeah.
to
Yep.
kind of really persuade their vision, and they were sold, and again kind of just took a chance into advertising, and I'm still riding that wave.
I love it. I love it. It's how I kind of fell into it too a little bit. It's just like I was saying earlier, is that it's like I know I like drawing, so what can I do with this? And yeah, then the whole world just kind of opens up, which is, like I said, you fall into it, but it's a nice soft landing when you get there. Sometimes it's a little prickly, but because it is advertising. Let's face it. There's a lot of things that are true about
Yes,
advertising, so that we've all the rumors we've heard. But thank you so
absolutely.
much. I appreciate you so much for doing this. And like, again, I think you're going to really be helping a lot of people with your story. So thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm stopping and it's going to collect.